Welcome to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitte, and not next to me at his wonderful home in Westerly, Rhode Island, Mr. Jack Piatelli, making his return.
Yes.
Oh,
Nice to be back. How are you?
You're half back.
Yeah, I'm half
You're
back.
not here.
Yeah.
Supposed to be here, and our guest's supposed to be here. But I get it, man. I get it. You got to go to your tournaments and travel at this time of year. Anybody, any parent, any player, any coach knows it's anytime you can get a respite, you have to take it. So I'm not mad at you.
As our next guest knows, it's a lot of driving, a lot of hot weather, a lot of sun, a lot of lacrosse. But as you know, I just had I had neck surgery, so I'm actually not even still supposed to be driving, but I've snuck a few drives in, and I'm all back and ready to go.
Yeah, that's for everyone wondering. We just wanted Jack to say that himself. We're not going to put that out there, and we are doing 2 podcasts a month in the summer, just because as much as these guys have been at tournaments, I've been at almost as many as them, at least one a week. But it's a good time to bring in our guest. He's our white whale. We've been chasing him for 3 years. We finally got him in the studio. I couldn't believe you were in the studio, but he's in the studio. It's St. John's Prep head coach John Pynchon. How we doing, man?
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you in here. I think we met 3 years ago in that first SJP champion. It was was that the lightning delay one?
Yeah, the weird COVID season into July.
The COVID season playing and the MIA season finished July 3rd, which is insane.
Yep.
That's a good place to start. What was that game like for you as a coach? Because for those who don't know, there was a lightning delay in the third quarter, and they just waited about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then they're like, "All right, everyone go home. We're coming back tomorrow morning." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "I got to do a story." Like, all right, we're doing half a story, but as a coach that gets suspended like that, and you got to come back the next day, what do you tell your guys?
That was wild. Certainly an experience we'd never had, where we had rain delays and things like that. But having to come back, do you go home and watch the film? Do you make any adjustments? What do you how do you change? What do you do? For us, I think we were in a good spot. We had a little bit of a run right before the weather hit, so we were able to go in and just kind of be like, all right, let's refocus, restart, do the warm up, do the routine, everything exactly the same tomorrow. And it was good. I think the next day, we were also playing at home, which was super weird because the COVID thing, we couldn't use a neutral site, so that was a huge advantage for us. BC had to get up, come back, go back, get back up on the bus and everything. So the second portion of the game was maybe a little less intense.
I don't remember it at all.
The lower energy, just because the night before was so crazy. So, but our guys did a good job responding. Mike Kelly scored a huge goal, which I think we only scored 2 that second part, but defensively we played well, and Caden Quirk made some saves and got the win. So,
Coach, I don't ever recall that ever happening before, where you had to play a game over, state championship game over a 2-day period. That's going to be a little nerve-wracking for the coaches as well, because you don't know how the players are going to respond the next day. What was your message to them going into the second day? Not only like, all right, we got to come ready to play, but because you get so hyped up for that game, right? And now you play a little bit and you got to go home. That's not easy to, be able to sleep and be ready to go the next day.
Yeah, we certainly try and be prepared for all sorts of things, and that was definitely a scenario that there's literally no way to prepare for. So I think we were just really purposeful about refocusing, starting again, right? The warm up we really try and use as an opportunity to get focused and stretch the same way, line up the same way, do everything exactly the same. And it's a new game. I don't remember what the score exactly was. I think we had a 2 or 3 goal lead. So that was a huge part of it. It was like, hey, let's be ready for BC High to make a push, but you know, we're in the lead right now, and this is a situation that we can deal with. It's a good situation to be in. It could be worse. We could be losing,
Right.
which would have been completely different. I think that was a huge factor.
We actually had that in the semifinals this year where we were losing and then there was a huge lightning delay, and it's just like we're already tapped. And then we go in and we're sitting in like the machine shop at Laconia, and we're trying to like get the kids, and there's no hurting them. There's no getting them together. They're all like all over the place. We're walking all over the school trying to find bathrooms, and then we're there for two lightning delays. And then we go back and it's just like, yeah, all right, let's go. And we got smoked. And it's tough when that happens, when you're on the other side of that. I've never been on the victory side of it, but having it happen in a playoff is like, whoa, that was the adrenaline dump alone was insane. And you guys ended up winning that game 11-7. That was the game where I fell in love with Jimmy Ayers. This is my favorite player of all time. I think we had Coach Milliman on, and I was asking him about him, and I was like, let me explain why I like him so much. And it's because he became, I just started covering high school when I started working here. And that was about 3-4 years ago now. And he was the greatest player to have as the bar. Okay. So he's the bar for anyone I'm evaluating, measuring, talking about. Are they better than Jimmy Ayers? And in his 4 years, no one was better for me. I'm sure that there's other arguments, you know, and there's other guys that got, like, I love Charlie Packer, and I love all these like really excellent players, and not putting anyone down in prep or public, but seeing him in the championship, seeing what he could do, seeing him at club events, like he was the bar for me. And he was so helpful without knowing, because like he doesn't know that, but he's so helpful for me to get a good level to measure against. And I know it probably sounds weird to you, but you saw him every day, and we've talked about him a couple of times. Give me some Jimmy Ayers stories, because I don't want the whole podcast to be about him, so I'm gonna get it out of the way. But that's, again, I guess you would call it infatuation, or like real admiration of him really started when he was a freshman.
Yeah. So we didn't have a freshman season with him.
First year I saw him play.
Yeah. But I knew him a little bit because his brother played for us. His brother was outstanding. And I think we did that weird COVID thing where you were allowed to practice on campus, but you could do like, I don't know. I don't really understand what we were doing. He was one of the best players right away. He just played at a faster pace, played at a higher level. And I think his sophomore year, that first year he played, we were pretty good offensively, and he fit in right away, and he didn't have to be the Dodger. He had some upperclassmen ahead of him, Mike Kelly, Tommy Sarney, guys like that. So he was able to play off ball a lot, and his ability to get open was uncanny. It was like, wow, Jimmy just, you know, that's exactly where I would have wanted someone to cut, and he was there at the exact perfect time. So it was a lot of fun that year. And then, you know, his junior and senior year, he kind of took steps forward. I think the stuff that people don't see is like his work in the weight room. He was one of the best testing athletes in our high school, coming through with our strength and conditioning and our speed program. And I believe, and Coach Millman I think he talked about this in your podcast, but he was like off the charts when he got down there as a freshman at Hopkins. So like his explosiveness, how he moves, is just really elite. And he's an outstanding kid too. Like, just, he's so humble and set a great example for our younger guys coming up about, like, you know, he got the NLI deal thing with STX, and kids were giving him a hard time about it and everything. And he was just so humble about it, and really down to earth. And he certainly could have made it about him. I always thank him because he could have scored way more points, but we would take him out a lot. He would allow the offense to flow through other guys, and it made us better, but it probably hurt. Like, you know, could he have gone for maybe a scoring record or something like that? Sure. We don't emphasize that in our program, and he was completely fine with that. And that's, you know, those are the little things that I think for me as a coach inside our program that we'll always remember.
Yeah. And at the high school level, it's hard to find any player that can, you know, when you talk about like pros and other sports, it's like, who can take over a game? Jimmy Ayers can take over a high school game. He's starting to learn how to do it as a college player too, which is kind of wild to me after watching him. And, you know, when I write about guys enough, other people in national media are like, "Oh, it's your boy, it's your guy." It's because I'm not the Mass guy, but I am the New Hampshire guy. So if it's anyone from New Hampshire, I claim it. But Mass, I'm like, no, he is special, and I had nothing to do with it. I just wrote about it a bunch of times. I just told you why I like him and why I think he's good, and that's a great distillation of him because like he is super humble. Like I've talked to kids and I've talked about this on the podcast with that are like not like that, and it's very evident from the jump. And that's tough because a lot of what I do when I do writing for NELJ is like I want it to be positive. I want to have these kids enjoy being written up. I want them to like have someone outside watch how they play and be like, he plays like this and this is what I like. I don't want someone to be like, oh, you didn't talk about this to me, because that happens too. And it's kind of like, oh, all right, that's okay. That's who you are. All right. You know, and that's, it puts a sour taste in your mouth, but I never had that with Jimmy or his brother, who I've big upped at Tufts as well. Michael's incredible as well. I think he was on that first team, right? Before he went.
Yeah, Michael was
Yeah.
a senior that year.
Yeah, he was a senior.
The Lightning year.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got, this job and how you've built this program.
Yeah. I grew up playing lacrosse in Mass. I played at St. John's for John Roy. And then went and played at Providence and coached down there for 2 years. I was coaching in Beverly. I got an opportunity to coach there, take over from Peter Gianolfi, and loved my time at Beverly. It was absolutely kind of, one of those things where I didn't think I'd ever leave Beverly, but then the job at St. John's opened up, and being an alum, and just kind of knowing what the school is about, and I guess being attracted to come back to that was a great opportunity. So went over there, and we've had a lot of success over the last couple of years. I work at the school, so being there full time is really helpful. I think for me, coaching wise, it provided some opportunities to do some stuff that we've been talking about doing at Beverly or trying to do at Beverly, but we just didn't necessarily have all the pieces in place, like, numbers wise and stuff like that. So some of the things we do with our program now are things that I've always believed that like high school teams should be doing, or I've seen other high school teams, listen to other high school coaches in other parts of the country talk about how they do stuff. And so, yeah, it's just been a great time. Super challenging and competitive and fun. And I think the success we've had over the last couple of years is a testament to the work that the kids have put in. I always say that like we give out the homework and give out the assignments, and the kids put all the work in and get it done. So we've been blessed with some amazing kids.
John, you talked about things you wanted to do in Beverly that you weren't able to do. Explain.
Yeah. So when I started in Beverly, my AD was a younger guy, James Coffey, and he was outstanding for me as a young coach, having a younger AD who was also super progressive in how he thought about things. And I would text him like all sorts of wacky, crazy ideas about doing stuff. So like, running a program where the varsity and JV is one program, and that is like, because I also coach football there. So I was like, why aren't we doing this like football? Why can't we do that? Stuff like that. Stuff with film and huddle. We were on huddle so early as a high school because of James Coffey. And I was like, good, huddle's going to be revolutionary for high school sports. We need to be all over this. And that was a little bit from football. And then, there's like, I think that mindset is important, but we ran into a bunch of roadblocks and barriers. We want to do a bunch of stuff with the youth program that we started to get into. But I think for me and how we ran the program, the culture stuff was the most important. And James was super, super supportive of that. We developed a lot of stuff in the weight room where we had summer strength and conditioning program, which I think we basically made mandatory. So these kids were training almost year round, stuff like that, that we were able to take at St. John's to another level because of, they built a wellness center and they had all these opportunities in their wellness curriculum and stuff to expand on that. And then just overall the size of the program. So I think for us, when we were at Beverly, we had some outstanding teams, outstanding guys, but we just didn't have a full enough roster, I'd say, some years where, we were just thin a lot. And at St. John's, because the school is so big, there's 1,200 boys, we're able to pull a lot more kids into the program and get a lot more athletes out. And that's just helped us become better practice-wise. So, going from a practice where we were going with 35 kids, now we practice with 60 kids. So.
Is that how many kids are in the entire program? Is 60 kids?
So we have, this year was the biggest. It's kind of grown over the time, but the 60 kids we call it a combined roster. It's just our varsity and JV teams that are combined, that practice every day, do everything exactly the same. And then we have a separate team, which is our JVB, which is mostly freshmen. Some years we have some sophomores. The freshman numbers fluctuate wildly. Like some years we've had very few freshmen and we've had to pull some sophomores, and other years we've had a lot of freshmen. So this year I think we had total 84 kids in the overall program.
Wow.
When you have that many kids, do you find it difficult to attract newer freshmen to play, because those freshmen kind of are coming in and maybe don't, I think in a lot of other programs where kids are growing up in the town and they go to the school, they know where they are in the pecking order before they go because they play with all these kids. Do you find that happens for you guys, or is it kind of a discouraging thing for them maybe to try to come in and play as a freshman, just knowing you're not going to get varsity time because there's 40 kids in front of you?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. I think people sometimes are turned away from the school or athletics in general because of how big it is. We try really hard to say, if you're going to put in the time and you're going to put in the effort and you're going to make a commitment to this program, then we're going to find a spot for you. And so, the reason our roster is so big this year is because we have so many juniors who are absolutely outstanding young men who work hard. They work hard in the classroom. They're great character guys. They might not play a lot for us per se, but they make the commitment to be on the team. We're going to find a spot for them in the program. So I would say there's an opportunity to play and be part of the program. When you play in the games might differ a little bit.
Right.
We emphasize a lot that being part of the program is more important than playing in the games. We have a pie chart that breaks down how much time we spend in the weight room, how much time we spend practicing in meetings, and how much time are games. And the games is the smallest percentage of what we do. So, if you're only in it for those games, you're missing out on what we think is the best part of the program.
Yeah. I think also when you have that many kids, I think the perception is you kind of have to be authoritarian to get everybody organized. And there's an element to that, but that's not, I wouldn't describe your coaching style as authoritarian or totalitarian or anything like that. I would say you're very even-handed. And from what I've seen, and I've talked to kids that have played for you and things like that. So I wouldn't really describe it as that. Is that off base, or do you just have crazy assistants? And I know you also have crazy assistants because I know a couple of them too. But how do you kind of handle that? What is your perception of what you're doing versus the reality for the players? I think
I'd say we are the most demanding and the biggest ask of any athletic program that these kids are going to be part of. So the expectation is incredibly high. And I think, maybe how I go about managing it is we just expect an absurd level of commitment from them, and they either meet it or don't. And if they don't meet it, then they, end up choosing not to play.
Right.
But I think from an organizational standpoint, we've never been, we're going to over-organize. So practice planning and scheduling and, basically every single thing we do, someone's there taking attendance. We start the same way. Being overly organized, which could be maybe some kids would chafe under that and not like it. I think we like to listen to the guys, though, give them a lot of opportunities for input, give them a significant amount of places and forums where they can have their say, they can shape the program in the way they want. And a kind of a symbiotic relationship with the players, making sure that they feel heard and part of what we're doing. But in the end, maybe a little bit controlling.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying like you're not controlling. I'm saying like maybe it's the way that I've seen it be. I guess enforced is not the best word, but like it works. Like the way it's been enforced on sidelines. Because not that I judge coaches for doing this, but I can tell which coaches have good relationships with their players and which ones don't. Because I don't know if everyone knows this, body language does not lie. You can lie out of your mouth, but you can't lie with how you stand, how you look, how you hold your stick, how you drop your head, how you walk, how you talk to your teammates, and how you gather, right? So you can get a lot out of that if you're really paying attention to it. And, with a lot of successful teams, there's different schools of thought of how you organize that. And I think with you guys, it's so much, I see you very united together a lot and it's so many kids on the sideline. So for me, that's really impressive because I know what it's like to gather the cats. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's, I'm at a much, much lower level coaching wise in terms of where we're at Hopkinton and the hierarchy of the state and all of that. I'm not pretending that that's the same thing, but kids are kids and numbers are numbers. So if you have 35 kids or you have 60 kids, there's a huge difference. And if you don't organize them correctly or in a way that works for them, it's going to have a negative impact. And I'm always impressed by, how teams in your entire conference are able to do that.
Yeah, I think we have some core values in the program that have been part of what we were doing back when we were at Beverly, and those core values haven't really changed. The most important one that we talk about is being team first. And so, for us as coaches, we have to value that. We have to model it. We have to be all about it. And it sometimes if we just lose our way or guys get frustrated or maybe people aren't doing the right thing, we try and come back to that. Like, what are we doing here? Is this about the team? Have you put the team first? Is the team what you're here for? And like I said earlier about guys like Jimmy Ayers, when your best players embrace that and live that and model it in super simple ways, like being okay coming off the field at halftime and only scoring 1 or 2 points. When I say being okay, being like super excited about guys in the second half who are scoring and being just, that is really, really helpful for us when we ask kids to buy in. So,
yeah, you're building a culture. You're not building a team, and that's why you've had success. It's building the culture, and the culture is what drives your success and understanding what the ultimate goal is, and that's to win as a team, because you can't win as individuals.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And in my journey as a coach, is the more that I learned and read and studied other successful coaches and programs, and the more, across, doesn't matter what the sport is, but the more you see that, it's really hard and it's intentional and it's like a year-round commitment to it, but it provides an opportunity to have a big group of guys succeed, have a big group of guys, I always take pride in when we have a local paper in our area. It lists the area leading scorers. We never have kids in there, but when you look at kids who scored varsity goals for us, it's 30 deep, right? We are, almost 15 guys scoring more than 10 goals in a season is something that's super special for me. I just take pride in stuff like that. And I think that's the culture. That's where we see it. And then the wins take care of themselves, or they come secondhand maybe. It'll be interesting if we don't win, which will happen at some point. That will be a real true testament to the culture. If guys are still willing to buy in when we aren't having the success, that's something I think about a lot now. So keep me up at night, but it's a good challenge.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hedden, head girls lacrosse coach at the Frederick Gunn School, an independent high school in Connecticut. We play in one of the most competitive prep school leagues and place athletes at top college programs. To learn more, visit gogun.org. That's GOGUNN.org.
Hey, it's Bobby Moran, Director of Athletics at Thayer Academy. You know what? Experience matters, and Thayer Academy's professional coaching staff understands how to work with each student athlete to help them succeed. Our coaches and faculty are committed to ensuring both 5th to 12th graders feel known, connected, and prepared. This is Thayer's secret sauce, nurturing each student to reach their full potential. Here, success is truly a team sport. Are you ready for your child to take the next step? See what Thayer has to offer at thayer.org. That's THAYER.org.
How, there's no great way to ask this. How do you deal with how many people dislike how much you're winning? How do you deal with that?
I have a quote on my wall in my office. It's like pretty close to where my computer screen is, so I see it a lot and I think about it a lot. But I was on this online class thing with the chairman of the SEC, this guy Greg Sankey, who was at Florida for a long time, and he was basically talking about that, about how no one likes winners and people are always going to, be super critical. And I think the question that someone had asked was Georgia at the time was having a lot of success and people were super critical of Kirby Smart. And he said, his quote was, they get to choose if they like you or not. Right. And so I wrote it down, I put it on a sticky note, and it's been up there for basically, that was the COVID year. So 4 years now. We talk a lot in our program about controlling things we can control. And if we show up and do things the right way and we are confident in how we're doing them and we believe in them and we're true to what we as a program stand for, then if people choose not to like us, we get it. And that's, I guess, so one of the unique things about me as an alumni at St. John's is that that's always been that way. People have always,
Because every team is good, right? Every team has had success, I should say.
Yes. There's been a lot of success. When I was there, the lacrosse team was not as good. I distinctly remember getting absolutely destroyed by John Pynchon in Winchester my sophomore year in the playoffs. And Winchester, they're one of the best programs in the state historically. But our baseball team was really good. And I had a lot of friends in the baseball team. And there's some phrases that people in Danvers' baseball team was really good at the time that use frequently. And those phrases still ring true. We hear them all the time. People don't like us. So it's, let's put it this way. When I first got there and we were struggling to make the playoffs, and I think, my first year we lost and didn't make the playoffs, that was way worse. And I'm absolutely way worse than winning and having people not like you.
Yeah, no, I mean, not that winning cures all ails at all, but it definitely helps for sure. And it took me a long time to experience that in my coaching career, because the first 12 years were not full of winning, and neither was playing at Clark. But that rings true if you have a career where you don't win a ton of stuff. Unlike Jack, who wins all the time at everything, obviously.
Yeah.
Model professional. We all know, Jack. I was just waiting for you to jump in. When you don't have that as your base, and then you start to do the things that enable you to win, not just on talent, because I think a lot of what everyone's upset with, just in general, I think with let's just say the Catholic League, preps, all that stuff. Everyone's mad that the talent's being taken or the talent's being developed somewhere else, or even club teams are mad that kids are switching and stuff like that. And I think what we lose when we get too deep into those weeds is the why of it. Why is that happening? Well, it's more challenging to do that than it is to stay in one spot. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, or I'm not saying one decision's better than the other, but when you lose the why of why you're mad and you're upset and, you say things you don't mean when you're mad, there's so many people that just get caught up in that. And I think, especially with the league and how MIA works, if I open my email box right now and showed you 4 emails just randomly, and I type MIA into my email thing, Do you know how many of them are complaints about the MAA? Which, by the way, I have nothing to do with. I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude writing about stuff. Like, it's literally like, why do they do this? Can you change? I'm like, I'm just, like, there's that kind of level of, now I don't want to say delusion because delusion's too strong, but like that emotional response is so wild. And like, I knew you'd have a good answer for it and a good way to deal with it. And I think that people need to like just pull back a little bit when they get so riled up. And it's interesting to hear you say that. And I have a proposal to not fix anything, but just to make things worse later that we'll get into. But I do think it's great because like we have it in New Hampshire too. Okay, we have the complaints there. We have the schools that are taking they're not kidnapping them, people. You know, that's the thing that bothers me is like, well, they're just stealing him. You're not stealing the kid. You're giving the kid a different opportunity, just like any other thing, like colleges do. Are you saying a college is going to steal a kid? Like, you wouldn't say that. You might if you're in the college. But I feel like when you get outside of it and you big picture it, it's not bad for the kids. I think that's my take on it. And I know that might be a little wild, but I think, like, if you're really upset about SJP having, I don't know, like 4 kids from a certain town, and you're like, oh, if we had those kids, we'd win a championship. It's like, first of all, you don't know that. And second of all, like, is that the best opportunity for that kid? Because it's not easy to walk in. You can't walk into St. John's, right? It's not easy to like get into these schools. There's wait lists and there's ways to get through that. And being an athlete is a way to get in, just like it is for college. So I feel like it's kind of a microcosm. I know it's a long rant about all this, but like, I really want to put it out there that like, you guys are really unreasonable.
I think there's a lot of animosity, and I guess I get it, right? Like, I've been part of this now, either playing or coaching in Mass for 20 years. And so, my 10 years when I was coaching at Beverly, we had kids leave. We had kids who went to other schools, and, that was hard. One of the, I don't know, and how I dealt with it then was, Dave Wilbur, our coaching mentor. He said it all the time, and Dave is a baseball coach, so no offense, but he's probably not going to listen to this. But I absolutely love Dave. Dave hates St. John's, right? Like, he just doesn't like St. John's because he lost a lot of kids who went there. But he always said to me, he goes, you can only coach the kids who are in front of you. And so every minute that you spend talking about a kid in your town who's not playing for you is a wasted minute on a kid who is in front of you. And that was when I was at Beverly. Look, I knew this was going to come up too. Like, right?
I'm not trying to trap you, man, but you know who I am.
Kyle, you're a professional, right? You're a journalist. You get it. It's a significant issue. My thing is the stuff people complain about. I always say, like, I internally text our coaches all the time. I'm like, they're complaining about the wrong stuff, right? Like, if they want to complain about something, complain about that our school is massive, right? We're 1,200 boys. It's a huge school, right? Mm-hmm. That's a huge advantage. If you want to complain about something, complain about that. It's an open enrollment, so people can apply from wherever they want and attend, right? If they want to complain about the resources we have, complain about those. Our wellness center is a great resource. We have a great strength and conditioning program, right? Like that, those are things which are genuine advantages for us. Are we recruiting? No. We do not know who comes to the school and who doesn't, right? So the first time I ever meet our freshman lacrosse players is March 18th, or when we have our first, day of lacrosse. Do we know about some kids beforehand? Absolutely. Lacrosse community is small, right? So, yeah. You know about people and you hear about kids, but, and I think that's the same for all the Catholic schools, right? I would say the same thing about BC High, the same thing about Xaverian, the same thing about CM, Shrewsbury, MC as well. MC is significantly smaller, but there are advantages that the Catholic Conference has, but what the people complain about, I laugh at because I don't think their complaints are true.
Right.
In that sense, right? Like if you want to say like, oh, the school dropped, Catholic Memorial draws from a wide area. BCI draws from a wide area. Those are completely legitimate complaints. Do kids come in and reclassify and repeat and do all those things? Absolutely not. You can't do that, right? So you're not getting a fifth year. You're not getting a kid. I always hear people talk about the middle schools. We have a middle school. I coached middle school soccer for the middle school. There's an absolute disconnect between our middle school sports and our high school sports. So it's not like a feeder system. Kids don't come in and go meet Coach Kroll, the soccer coach, and move their way up. The middle school athletics are not designed to be competitive. In fact, the best middle school athletes at the middle school oftentimes don't even play for the middle school teams. So it's like people talk about that and they say that that's an issue, and it's like on our side that's the exact opposite. Like we don't do that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Obviously, you played there. You were a good competitive team when you were in high school. Went to Beverly. Obviously, going back to your alma mater. Did you ever think that you would be able to get to the level you're at in such a short period of time? One, did you think you could get here? Two, did you knew you could get here? And how soon did you think you could get to where you're at today?
I think from a program standpoint and a culture standpoint, yes. When we were at Beverly, we were getting pretty close. We were pretty competitive there. I think we'd done a really good job of building the program and the values. We had success that was when they were in sectionals. So we had success going to, winning our section for a couple of years. We were close. We perennially lost to like Hingham. We lost to Winchester one year. Lost to Longmeadow one year. And those were kind of the bar that we were reaching towards at Beverly. When I took the St. John's job, one of the first things I did was I got together with Coach Doobie. Coach Doobie also played there. He won a state championship there, and he had been working in the program. I literally think about this pretty much every year. Jeff and I got together. I sat down with Jeff. I wanted to learn more about where everything was at. I had some notions of where things were from my side. We played St. John's. We played in a tournament against them over April break. So I had some ideas about the team. And I remember Jeff saying like 3 years. He's like 3 years, we can put this thing from I think they were 3-14 or something. They really struggled. And they had some tough cultural things with some of the kids and some of the people, I think, that, just made it really hard to win. And Jeff said like 3 years. We're going to be good in 3 years. And, our first 2 years were super difficult. There was a lot of growing pains. There was a lot of, I don't know about, the kids who we had were absolutely outstanding. And we as coaches talk about this a lot. I talk with Coach Buhos. He mentions some of the guys all the time, like guys who we wish we had been able to coach for 4 years, who were seniors that first year, who were super talented lacrosse players. And we're like, man, it would have been really special. And because they bought in really quickly, but just like, I think we talk a lot about the learning curve and what we expect from guys. I don't know if we could have been successful. We had to kind of go through that process. So, the first year not making the playoffs, second year basically going 500, having to go down to Medfield and beat them to make the playoffs, losing to Acton Boxborough in the playoffs. Like those are things which had to happen for the young guys like Michael Ayers, Michael Kelly, for them to learn and grow. And then, the year before COVID, we lost to LS. They beat us in the playoffs, and LS is the gold standard for high school lacrosse in the state, in my opinion, at the Division I level. And like losing to Coach Vana, losing to that program, and everything they do on the field, off the field, how they conduct themselves, it was like, nope, that's where we need to be. And then we had the COVID year, and that COVID year team was going to be really good. I think that was a special group. Our junior class was stacked, and that those seniors had done it for 3 years, so they kind of got it. But then we came out of the COVID year, and I think we just blessed with special kids and blessed with some great environment things that really helped us, and here we are. So, yeah, and just
no one was complaining when you had a losing record, right? Now that you're winning, everyone's complaining.
I know. And Danny Ventura, who writes for the Herald, and he's done high school sports in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah,
forever. Danny V because he gets into it all the time in every sport, right? Like he hears it all the time, and I he says that, and I go, that is true. I mean, people were still complaining, but when a Catholic school wins in a sport, the complaints are very loud. If they don't win, though, I don't know.
They're just as loud. They're just more internal.
Yeah,
like that is
true.
probably the best way to put that.
People are still mad about it, and again, I understand why. But yeah. So,
do you think you're being held to an unfair standard because of that?
It's
by the public, not by your team or anything.
No, I think meaning like the expectation that we win, or like
that you always win, you always do that. Like, oh, they're always gonna win, so like, why are we? Not that I've heard this from anyone. No one in Mass would ever say this, but like the attitude of like, oh, well, we're never gonna win. Like when St. John's and all these teams have all these best players, like how are we gonna beat them?
Yeah, but you know what, Kyle? A few years ago, they were saying the same thing about CM and BC High and Needham and Lincoln Sudbury. So,
it is cyclical, and I think that we try and really stay grounded in that. We're at a high point right now, but we've been at the low points, and I'm sure there'll be low points in the future too. So, the more success we have, the more I think I especially try and really lean into the cultural stuff, because that's really all we can control, right? If we were to have lost against BC High 2 years ago, or was the 23 season, we came from behind, we had a bunch of stuff go our way in 12 minutes of lacrosse, like stuff that we look back and watch film. Wow, Jake Vanna shooting the ball in between his legs right there. That probably goes in not a lot, but it did that time, and it helped us. Those little things, right? We lose that game. How are we as kids? How are we in the classroom? How are we as a community, as a culture? Those are the only things we can control. And if those are true, and we believe in them, and they are valued by every kid in the program, we might not win, but I would still consider that as a success. I would hope our kids and our families would consider the season a success. And maybe the expectation is, oh, they didn't win, and but.
Well, I will say, like, we were talking internally, and I'll just pull back the curtain a little bit. We're talking internally about what we're going to do with the cover. And I was like, do we do 4-peat, guys? Are we doing that? 3-peat? Like, what are we doing? They're like, they've been on the cover every year. Like, we kind of have to change it up. I was like, we probably should change it up, but like, we have to acknowledge that's a pretty incredible achievement. And I think Medfield's on the cover.
Yeah, I like that.
I
like the Medfield cover. Coach Isef is an absolute legend, one of the best in the state. So
yeah, I think I'm back on his good side, so I'm pretty excited about that. But let me, it's time. This is my proposal. Super Catholic League. Okay, you take BG, can't get him out. Take BG. You take St. Thomas. You take some of the Rhode Island teams. LaSalle. You all play in a separate, you still do your MIA schedule, you're still eligible to win, all that stuff. But you play that, it's kind of like, I look at it like soccer, like Champions League. So you kind of do like your hybrid Champions League cup, and you do a different cup just of all the Catholic schools. How does that go down well? Am I insane for suggesting that? Or is that just like, I think that would be fun. Like, I feel like everyone's just so tight when we talk about high school sports and winning and losing out. And it's like, why aren't we having fun with anything? And Massachusetts does this great thing where during the vacation week, they have the separate, cups, and they're for different causes and things like that. Why don't we just do that with all these great teams and like have them battle each other and bring them in from other states? Like, teams like BG is the most famous example I can think of, just from New Hampshire. You probably have to take Bishop Brady too. I don't know how that would go, but like, you'd have to take, you take all these teams and you play, maybe you have a tiered system, something like that. You have to go through a group stage and you get knocked out and you go to the semi. I think that would be incredible. Why not do that? I feel like there's room for it in your schedule. Then that's your out of conference.
Yeah,
instead of doing all this other stuff.
So I think the challenge is, this is where the discussion, you could literally, like when I was asking you how long we were going to be on, right? Because like there's talk about all sorts of different solutions to this. Some of the intricacies that come involved are, that might work really well for lacrosse, but
Right.
there's 20 plus other high school sports that each high school operates under. And so the thing about the MIA is the MIA it's all encompassing, right? So it covers all of these sports, and their rules and their guidelines, they've been pretty clear about this. They are trying to streamline it, I think, and come to a consistent state tournament format and have a consistent approach to how they play the soccer state tournament or the hockey state tournament. So hockey had a Super 8 for a long time. I think hockey's a pretty good example of this, where there was Catholic schools. By the way, some of the Catholic schools that were successful in hockey in the 80s, Jack, you might remember this, like they don't even exist anymore, right?
Right.
They literally have folded. They don't exist. So, but the MIA said we can't do a Super 8 in that. We play as a member of the MIA, and I think, these solutions and these ideas are very creative.
It's not a solution. It's just an idea.
Well, these ideas,
It's just
but
an idea.
they always end up, like the next hurdle is, okay, then the state association would have to agree to it. And that seems to kind of be the end of all of these discussions. I think the best example that I look at for us in the state is, I look at New Jersey. One of our assistant coaches, Max Allen, played down there for Don Bosco, and they had the Tournament of Champions. And Max talks about it all the time, because Don Bosco is super similar to St. John's, that they play in a state association, but then would have a Catholic championship, and then they would play in the Tournament of Champions. And so you would get these various divisions that would then all play together. The New Jersey State Association did away with it. Right? It's like, it seemed like a great
recently,
thing.
right?
Yeah, recently.
Yeah.
But I believe, and I'm not an expert on New Jersey lacrosse, but I believe the reason they did away with it is because it was unique to lacrosse, and it wasn't something that was replicable across all of the other sports. And that's what that state association level, and we're talking about school superintendents, school principals, athletic directors, people who are thinking about 1,000 other things besides lacrosse.
You're gonna add this thing in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they,
No.
and they're thinking about buses and all sorts of crazy stuff that we just don't have to think about.
Yeah. I mean, the closest, not the closest thing, but there's kind of a version of it, right? In the summer with NELS a little bit, right? You can't coach there's an SJP team there, but you can't coach them. Is that the MIA rule?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I go and I stay far away.
yeah, I was there. But like, you can have your assistants coach, or is it it's college coaches? Something like that.
I'm so one
unable to comment.
Yeah, no. One of the things that I'll be very clear about, like for us, is if there's an MIA rule, then we will follow it. Like we won't even mess around with it, right? So could could Coach Doobie or Coach Buchholz go down, Coach Amy, and like be on the sidelines and help out?
Yeah.
Sure. Do other teams do that? Yeah, probably.
From out of state, they do.
Yeah. Oh, but
yeah,
so
from
out of state,
because they have different rules.
rules. They have completely different rules.
Yeah.
You
Maybe
know?
that's the problem. One of the problems. I want to put it all at everyone's doorstep, but like, I just think it's, sports are going towards, I hate saying this. It's true though. It's just that elitism is kind of the thing that rules the day. And it's not gonna go away. It's only going to get more elite, more concentrated, and more difficult for, and everyone knows about this with recruiting, right? Like everyone talks about it with recruiting, but it also has to do the trickle down is going through to club programs and things like that, and town programs. And now it's town versus club, and, program versus program. The problem is it doesn't help the kid. And that's when I kind of go like, all right, well, who is this helping? Right? Like elite of the elite. And listen, we do all-star lists here. We do watch lists. We do stuff like that. I try to make it as even and altruistic as possible. but there is still an element of like, this kid tore it up. Why didn't you write about him? And sometimes the answer is like, well, I didn't see him. And sometimes the answer is, I'm going to write about him later, which is what happened. I actually did that this week to someone who was like, why didn't you write about this kid? He was the best kid at the tournament. I was like, I have him earmarked for a different tournament he was at. Like, it's literally how it, and he actually is a just prep kid now that I think about it. Which is funny. But I won't put him on.
But you know what? You know what's funny is, John, obviously you can advocate for this, but you build a culture because you're building young men to be successful outside of lacrosse. And so many parents get caught up in the wins and the losses and the recruiting. But if you're building a team, you're not building young men. You build a culture. They have a better understanding, what life ahead is all about, right? It's about working together for the ultimate goal and being a good teammate. And, it's not all about me and I got to get my 50 points. And because if you have that attitude in real life where it's all about you and you don't know how to work with other people to be successful, you're not going to last very long. And no matter what line of work you're in.
Yeah, I think, Jack, you're 100% correct. And to build off of what Kyle, you were saying there, in the last 15 years. So when I started coaching in Beverly, there was very little club lacrosse. I mean, it was compared to now, right? I don't necessarily need to coach my kids on more lacrosse. From March 18th through June, whatever. Yes, we are playing lacrosse, and that is the mechanism that we're using to, like you said, shape young men and help them grow. But are there finer points of the game that we're working on and teaching? Yes, but they're shooting and they're dodging and they're one-on-one defending. They're doing that in the fall. They're doing that all summer long. They're doing that at their individual club, etc. So very rarely are we now coaching like the bare bones of lacrosse. I think the way 10, 15, 20 years ago, coaches were doing that just because of the amount of lacrosse they're playing. So what are they getting out of the 3 months that they're with us? I think they're getting all the other stuff that I can't coach when I go to my club practice, right? So I go and coach my club practice and it's X's and O's. It's, hey, move to the front of the net here. Like all these little subtle things, but it's not, I will say the club program I work for, they try and emphasize it and we do, but we don't have enough time to, right? We don't have enough time to build those cultural things in the way we do in a high school season. And so I look at what they get from us during their high school season as way beyond lacrosse, right? And those life skills and, no one's going to make their livelihood on lacrosse. I mean, they could. And if they do, that's amazing. Lacrosse is the absolute best. I absolutely love it. And my life is surrounded by it and intricately woven into it. But I work in a high school, right? Like it's not about lacrosse for 99% of the kids who come through our program. It's about becoming good young men, becoming good partners, becoming good spouses, becoming good employees, good bosses, good managers, good people. And I see that in the hockey program. I see that in the basketball program. I see that in the football program. That these kids, it doesn't matter what the high school sport is, Kyle. They're playing it.
Dude, I know. My entire team is 3-sport athletes. Like but lacrosse is not the favorite sport of most of my kids. Like just period. It's not. I was talking to a kid who was playing Tomahawks and he stopped playing. I was like, oh, I heard you stop playing. Like what happened? He's like, I get more out of, this is a very mature response. He's a rising senior. He's like, I get more out of just being there with the guys and playing hard for them than I do doing summer stuff. And I was like, I will never push back on that ever.
Yeah, I hear that.
I can't.
I hear that more and more. We have a lot of kids who play a ton of club and they play, I guess too much lacrosse, right? Which is, they play so much and they get, yeah, it's just different. And I think guys, one of the things that I see as being really something I like about high school lacrosse and that we can't do at St. John's, but a town like Hingham can do, or LS has done, Medfield has done in the past, Longmeadow's doing, is taking their kids and pulling them out of some of these club tournaments and getting them all together and going down to whatever the one is now. It's like 2 sessions. It's massive. The high school club tournament down there. It's not club, actually. It's just high school teams.
Right.
Or like when I'm out on the club circuit in the fall and I see Reading did this for a couple of years. When I saw the Reading, basically the Reading high school team out there together playing, that is awesome. That is, you know, that is special. That is fun. And I wish we could see more of that. Maybe a blend. I get there's a need for club. Club is great. Don't get me wrong. But right. I just wish there was more of a blend of that, because that's where you get a lot of the team play, a lot of the organization and structure that you lose in some of the other aspects.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, that's it's gonna do it, man. I know we could sit here and talk for hours, and you know, you've always been great with me and giving me time, and I really appreciate you coming in finally and talking with me and Jack. It's pretty great.
Congratulations on the state championship, Coach.
Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I love the podcast. Thank you.
And
Thanks, well done.
Thanks again for listening to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. For Jack Piatelli, I'm Kyle Devitte. We'll see you next time.